Hello and welcome to Thursday Live Lessons. My name is Aldrine Guerrero. I'm joined by Mr. Mike Odo. So what's up, Mike?
What's up, guys?
I'm joined, as usual, by Mr. Aaron Nakamura and Mr. Kahai Fergan as well. So the boys are back. We're going to be answering your questions. So any questions that you may have throughout the entire week, if you've emailed them, if you sent it to us in any other way, if you sent it to us with a green button on your screen on the Ukulele on the Ground Plus forums, then we will get it. We'll try to answer it as best as we can. We are also live. We have a live audience who can ask us whatever question you want. Mike is here, so he is our resident music theory and just music in general expert. So if you guys want to know anything music related, it doesn't even have to do with the ukulele. If you just want to ask music questions, Mike Odo is here. He's got 15 master's degrees on music. So he's good, right? So he's our guru. He's a music guru today. So Kahai is going to be giving me the questions. Aaron is here. He's going to be answering the chat. And both of these guys are also going to be putting in their 2 cents. So collectively, we'll try to provide you with the best answer possible to whatever questions you may have. Let's get started. Kahai, hit me up with a question.
We didn't really have questions this last week. I don't know. Sorry.
Okay, so because there's no questions, we'll wait for the live audience to send us some. I think we were kind of like, I don't know if Mike's going to come or if Mike's not going to come because I just asked him last night. Like, hey, Mike, can you come down tomorrow? He's like, I guess so. But I love the shirt.
Thank you.
Shirt. For those of you folks who don't know, this is M. Nunes, M. Night Shyamalan's Manuel Nunes.
Thank you. All the plot twists that he created were good.
So, he is, you would say, the father of the ukulele, right?
One of the 3.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the man in your shirt and just your shirt in general. What did you get?
Well, I found this shirt at a ukulele store in Kona.
Okay, well, do you know what it was called? For those people who are visiting Kona, like that shirt. Hawaiian ukulele guitar. Oh, cool. Yeah, so that's over in Kona?
Yeah,
nice.
In the Queens shopping centers.
Cool.
So the guy on the shirt is one of the 3 recognized people who brought the ukulele over.
Okay.
For those who want a history lesson, or even if you don't,
because
because you have no choice because you're watching.
That's my Thursday Live question to you.
So the ukulele was developed here in Hawaii. However, the original instrument is a instrument from Portugal, specifically from the island of Madeira, called a machete. However, there is a very similar instrument.
Watch your mouth, Mike.
There's a very similar instrument that you find in Brazil called the braguinha. Since Brazil specifically has so much Portuguese influence and a lot of Portuguese people moved over there, it stands to reason that someone brought that instrument over and they just started making it down there. There were a couple differences. So if you see a soprano ukulele, that's pretty much about the size of that instrument, except it was generally made with spruce woods and steel strings, metal strings. So when they got here, the story is true that the Hawaiian sailors watched the guys playing this machete and they really loved it. That's where the ukulele gets its name because their fingers are moving so fast. However, when it came time to build the instrument, they found that there were a few obstacles in their way. Number one being steel strings rust. Steel strings rust in about 30 seconds here in Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Thankfully, ukulele players from Mosa are immune to that. But anybody who plays a steel string guitar can tell you if you take it outside on the wrong day, you'll have rusty strings in about a half an hour. Also, at the time, being that this is about the mid-1800s, steel would have been expensive. Steel, iron, any metal would have been expensive. So they wouldn't have wanted to waste metal on strings like that. So that's why they moved to gut strings. For those of you who don't know what that means. In the olden days, instead of nylon, what they did was they took animal intestines and cut tiny little strips of it, dried it in the sun, and then when you pulled it up to tension, it would make sound. The only instrument I think that still uses that might be upright bass players who play primarily orchestral or bluegrass music. Other than that, pretty much everybody has kind of moved on from that simply because if you have pets, your pets will eat the strings.
So you work in a music store. Is there any companies that still sell gut strings? Because I know they're still around.
Yes,
nobody
do.
really uses them, but they're still around, right?
Actually, Aquila actually makes a set of guts.
Okay.
However...
And that's where Aquila
Yes,
comes
that's
from.
where
It's like a synthetic gut that they were trying to replicate.
But literally, I've seen people who put like gut strings on their classical guitars, and then their dog will eat it.
Ooh.
Because it's basically a cheap toy.
like a rawhide
So
or whatever. Yeah.
and they're much more expensive. I think a set of like tenor regular now gut strings is maybe about $10-11. A set of actual gut strings probably about $22. So it's almost twice the cost.
Yeah.
And then there are gut strings are also way more susceptible to humidity and temperature changes. So if you have fluctuating temperature or humidity where you live, the strings will stretch, contract, all sorts of.
What are the sonic differences between the two?
Old school gut strings tend to be much more of a mellow sound. At least that. Now I've played on being a bass player. I have played on upright basses that have gut strings. The sound is a lot mellower. Yeah. And so if that's kind of the sound you're looking for, and now there are a couple of instances for specific types of music that you really want to use gut strings. Orchestral people kind of go back and forth. Most of them are using steel strings nowadays because the projection is better and the clarity is better. However, bluegrass players who do the upright slapping bass, like the old Elvis style where you pull the string and slap it to they almost exclusively use nylon gut strings. Simply because there's so much tension on steel strings that if you try to do that, you'll rip the skin off your fingers. Not a good thing. So anyway, so when you change from steel to gut strings, the first thing you have to do then is you have to change the design of the instrument. So for any of you who get a little technical, there's something inside any string instrument called bracing. So if we took the top of this off and flipped it over, you'd be able to see some pieces of wood that basically brace the top against the pull of the strings. But on a steel string instrument, you have to make it much thicker and heavier because steel strings have that much more pull. On a nylon string instrument or a gut string instrument, it's a lot less. So you would lighten all that up. So along the way, the machette got turned into the ukulele by changing the strings, changing the bracing patterns, and also keep in mind woods like spruce and mahogany that were kind of indicative of that instrument don't grow in Hawaii. So again, we're faced with the importing question. Would we import something to make that? They didn't. What they went with was koa, and so the interesting novelty about koa in this situation is that everybody associates ukuleles with koa wood now. Yeah, that's not why it was chosen. It was chosen because it's what they had. Yeah. Matter of fact, a lot of it was simply because the wood makers looked at it and said, "Oh, that looks like mahogany. We can use that.
That looks good."
Yeah,
that looks great.
And so rather
Close
than importing,
enough.
it was close enough for them.
Like,
so instead
this
of
actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
well, as anybody who builds will tell you, the type of wood you put into it changes the character and the sound. So kind of what happened was almost reverse engineered. They used koa because that was what was here in Hawaii, but then that helped define the sound of the ukulele. So then everybody after that had to keep making the ukuleles out of koa to keep the sound to get the sound everybody knew. So Manuel Nunes, he was one of the three guys. The other guy was Jose Espirito Santo and I can't remember the third guy's name.
It's always the drummer that you forget.
Ringo, that was the name.
Yeah,
Ringo.
Ringo Silva. No. Was it Portugal?
Yeah.
Okay, Da Silva.
Oh man. But right on. Hey, how about a round of applause for this small little history lesson by Mike Ono? That was great. I've heard that story, but never told that, that fascinating.
Yeah.
Really? And I knew all this stuff already. I'm like, man, did Manuel Nunes do that?
Yeah. So would you say that the ukulele is a Hawaiian instrument then, or like a kind of?
I would say it's a Hawaiian instrument, but it definitely has Portuguese roots.
Yeah.
Because if you brought a machette and put it in front of the audience and put a soprano ukulele in front, they would have similarities, but the fact that it's a different type of string, a different type of construction method, and different woods generally used, to me would make it a different instrument.
Like a totally, it seems
you
like
can
it'd
definitely
be
see the evolution from one to the other, but it is still a different instrument.
Yeah.
Same thing as like a guitar is not a lute.
Yeah.
You know,
even though it has
have
origins in the lute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So because it's braced the same exact way and using the same exact strings, even if you were to choose different wood combinations, like say, spruce and mahogany, like how they used to back then.
No, I think what he's saying is that it wasn't braced the same.
No, that's
Right.
that's what I'm saying. So if the ukuleles are are braced this way, so even with the different wood choices, it would still be an ukulele because it's not braced how it was. It's like
Oh,
Right.
okay,
Since it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
braced like a machete or brigina, it would. That's what helps define it as an ukulele, because that helps. The bracing, as anybody who builds instruments will tell you, how you brace it helps define the sound of the instrument.
So it's not any one thing that would characterize as an ukulele.
No, it's
all the
it's a
of
combination of
things.
all those
Yeah,
things
that's what I'm
together.
So I was trying to get at like different, because ukuleles nowadays are made with different, different instruments, and of course every single maker is bracing it a lot differently. Like
Right.
Aloha doesn't brace it at all. They just have that one unit brace, and so that would be more towards what I guess super ukulele like bracing, because if you're saying there's less bracing because of less tension on the strings, so even though people are bracing it differently, people are building it with different different materials, it's still still an
Right.
ukulele.
Well, the thing to remember is that then even from that perspective, the ukulele as it came out around the 1870s, the first gut string, cold wood, all that stuff like that, that was, over 100 years ago. So no instrument on the planet really has stayed the same, since that. Any instrument that was around in 1870 is not like it is then. Nobody makes it. Even the closest instrument I could probably tell you would be maybe the guitar, like a classical or flamenco guitar. That might be one of the closest instruments that's still built exactly the same way.
But you can still find them like a machete somewhere, right?
Oh yeah, people still probably make those.
Would
I mean, if you go to
sound
Portugal
different?
for sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think we went to Nam and there was a maker there,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he made ukuleles too, or he started to make ukuleles. I think he was telling us, right?
Yeah.
But like if you listen to it, it kind of sounded different. It didn't sound like a ukulele from Hawaii, or it sounded closer to
it was different. I mean, it was maybe the tuning. Like I know the tuning was different.
Oh
right?
yeah, maybe, and like the tonality kind of it sounded closer to those instruments rather than like the ukulele that we know, right?
Yeah.
But it was.
Was it steel strings? Do you remember? It was, right?
I know the machete that he had were right. Like I think the actual ones that he made. So
it was kind of cool actually. And it had like the slotted headstock with like the classical guitar kind of style.
Yep.
And it was pretty cool. Yeah. I have a Manuel Nunes story.
Okay.
So, it's a little creepy. So, I have been in the presence of Manuel Nunes, so to speak.
Okay.
So I was over at, I think it was at Kapiolani Hospital. I was visiting a family member there, and while they were doing their hospital thing, I was playing a very popular game called Pokemon Go. So I was playing Pokemon Go, and I'm like, oh, right on. And there's these things called Pokestops, which it's I guess points of interest.
Non-aloha Pokestop.
No, not aloha. No aloha poke. Hashtag no aloha poke.
Hashtag that's not cool.
Yeah, not chill, bro. Anyway, so there's a Pokestop. I like that pull. There's a Pokestop in the nearby cemetery by Kapiolani Hospital or Kapiolani Medical Center, and I was like, okay, right on. So I check it out, and I zoomed in on what the Pokestop was, and it's the final resting place of Mr. Manuel Nunes. And then, because you can kind of see, what the point of interest is. I was like, oh, right on. And I'm like, I should check that out. I should go to that cemetery, and I should pay respects and check that out.
And catch Pokemon.
And catch Pokemon. I don't know, maybe I'll catch a Ghastly or something over there. So I did my Pokestop, and I went inside, and it was a little weird and creepy because I'm like, oh, what do I do now? I guess I'll pay my respects. So I said some stuff. I'm like, now I just look like that weirdo in like the daytime going to like cemeteries. And there's like one other guy, and he looked even weirder to me, and he gave me like a weird look. Like, oh, look at this weirdo like here at this cemetery. So that's my Manuel Nunes story. So it's pretty cool if you guys want to do like a little pilgrimage and stuff. It is over there. I want to say it's either Kapiolani or what was that other one that not Polimomi, but there's only 3 major hospitals.
The Queens?
There. Yeah, Queens. Either Queens or Kapiolani. hospital. It was one of those two. I've been to all three of them, and there was a Pokestop like nearby, and it's Manuel Nunes. So if you guys want to check that out, I mean, if that's like a thing. Apparently, it was my thing. I was like, oh,
Even if you can't
this
remember
is
which
cool.
hospital it was, you should be able to find it. It's not moving.
Yeah, so as all the players,
It was just like a normal gravestone
yeah, it's like,
or
oh, well,
something.
it was a little decorated, you know.
Uh-huh.
So and it had like the his not mausoleum, but the little headstone thing.
Uh-huh.
It's like Manuel Nunes, inventor of the ukulele.
Oh,
and all
wow.
that cool stuff. So I was like, oh, right on, you know.
Yeah. I mean, we went to go see Jimi Hendrix's
Yeah,
grave.
that's
But
cool. It had like a
that's like
full-on,
a
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess I have a
It's like
thing
a
for,
monument.
yeah, for like final resting places.
Yeah.
And funny story on that, we went to Jimi Hendrix's grave, and then like we turned around and there's this kind of Asian looking like full on like decked out place, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I wonder who's buried over there. And then like we left and then we looked it up and like, oh my god, Bruce Lee was buried.
Yeah. I was
Oh,
so
no!
bummed.
We were that close to Bruce
We're
Lee's
so
grave.
close. I mean,
Oh,
It
no.
was like, oh, that must just be like the
Thought it was a
Asian
PF
section.
Thought it was a PF Chang's.
P.F. Chang's still alive.
This is what you tune in for,
I don't,
folks.
yeah. Oh, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he still is, but I'm
I
sure
don't
he
even know.
is.
I don't know if PF Chang's actually a real dude.
Yeah, that's a dude.
Yeah.
That's like a.
Yeah.
Like,
Is he a dude?
That's the
'Cause-
chef of like that place.
I don't know why you guys keep calling him P.F. Chang's. I always thought it was Chang. Chang.
Okay, let's take questions from the audience because obviously
Please.
we are being
Well-
derailed. Go ahead.
Jim brought up that last week we were asked if there was Hawaiian names for the ukulele.
Oh, for,
That is-
Oh
remember
yeah, I
that?
didn't find any. I didn't find any
Hawaiian names
different
for the-
sizes.
for the different size.
Oh.
Like
Yeah.
soprano and concert and tenor.
Cakey size. Super
I-
cakey. I couldn't find
That
it.
was a
I did
good
look,
show
I
in the
did
80s.
look.
Yeah, whose name?
Jim.
Jim. Well, Jim brought it up, and I think
Last week.
it was Renee who asked.
Oh,
if
okay.
There's
So, just to also clarify something, one of the reasons there might not be like specific names for the different sizes of ukulele in Hawaiian is because the Hawaiians didn't invent those. The actual person or company that actually came up with concert, tenor, and baritone sizes was Martin Guitars.
Whoa, we got it on the head. That's what you said last week, right? You're like, oh, Martin did this. That's how we got to the baritone discussion. Oh, Aaron hits it.
Yeah.
Aaron Park. See, he knows stuff.
I did. Yeah,
Aaron
I
graduated
wasn't.
from college.
I didn't really know, but
Well, funny enough, Martin Guitars is actually the oldest production maker of ukuleles in the world. They're actually older than all the Hawaiian companies. Because the oldest Hawaiian company that's still around is Kamaka. So they are 102 years old and founded in 1916. Martin's first ukuleles actually came out in 1907.
Oh, take that, Kamaka. Take that.
So what happened with that
oh, but
was...
did they continuously build ukuleles?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, they have actually been continuously building ukuleles since 1907.
Oh,
I thought they stopped at one point.
No, they've never stopped building ukuleles. However, they have taken it out of like mass production at times. There have been times, I think, around the 40s and then the 60s and 70s where ukuleles would still be made. They still had all the templates and everything like that, but they were all special orders. So if
Yeah,
you had
that
a
makes
Martin
sense.
catalog around that time, they wouldn't have shown any ukuleles, but you could still call them up and say, "I want."
Like
You know,
5K or
Yeah,
something.
they would still build them for you. How that worked was, Martin is in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, and that's basically around the New England area. So a lot of what happened was Hawaii, for those of you who don't know, in the 1800s was a huge whaling hub. So whalers and basically fishermen. I mean everything.
We played at Wheelers.
Oh yeah,
Brew pub. Go ahead.
on the cliff. I wonder what that building is.
Only
now.
real Hawaiians will know.
I tell you. I wonder what that building is now.
I don't know.
It's just been
It's like a
falling
golf,
apart for
whatever.
like 20 years. Yeah. So, anyway, a lot of those whalers, picked up the ukulele, in its first forms. And then when they went finally home after 3, 4, 5 years, back to New England, it kind of made its way around. And eventually it made its way in around like 1904, 1905. Somebody gave one to Chris Martin, although Chris Martin that actually ran, because it's been a Chris Martin every... it's always been a Chris Martin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's 5 of them now.
Oh.
The CF Martin?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
PF Checks?
Well,
Sif Martin. Sif Martin.
well, it's funny because it's
Yeah.
because the guy who runs it now is Chris Martin,
Mm-hmm.
but his great grandfather was Christian Friedrich.
Mm.
He was the first guy to come over from Germany and start the company, and so he has always made sure there was a Christian or Chris. I think the current one is like Christopher something. I don't know, but anyway, so they built it, and actually the first ukuleles they made were terrible flops because that whole thing I said about having the difference between a steel and a nylon string instrument.
Yeah.
Martin, being that they were guitar makers, approached it from the perspective of making a guitar, which was terrible.
Which is
So
how a lot of guitar, a lot of guitar makers who kind of latch on to the popularity of ukulele
and the ukuleles are
tend to
horrible.
yeah. So
awful.
unless they're kind of open-minded after that first flop, they usually don't
usually
do
don't.
too well.
And Martin was. So 07, the first ones came out, and then about 3 years later, I want to say around 1910, the first batch of good Martin ukuleles came out, and then they became super popular.
Do you know what was the problem with the beginning ones? Was it overbraced? Was it like
Overbraced, I think. Overbraced, and just maybe poor wood selection could have been it too.
Okay.
And so basically, it was really that. And then around 1915, 1916, what had happened was there was a huge uptick in ukulele sales. Everybody loved them, and then sales started to taper off, and they couldn't figure out why until they realized that everybody who was going to buy one had already bought one. And so they're like, what can we do to pump up sales? And they realized that at the time, entertainment in your home was everybody sit in a circle and let's play songs, around the family. That's why every home had a piano at the time and stuff like that. So a guitar was kind of a big investment. At that time, a guitar could be somewhere between $70 and $100, which for some people was like your whole year's salary, maybe.
But that's like buying a TV nowadays and stuff.
Yeah, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
An ukulele, however, they were selling for like $5 to $10. Well, they realized that everybody had already bought their little ukuleles, so they came up with the idea to build 2 more sizes, and that became the concert and the tenor.
Touching.
Exactly, and so they
you
figured,
don't have this one.
Exactly. No, that's kind of what it was, because they realized
that's why
wasn't
people
gonna
have
buy,
UAS now.
Yeah, a family wasn't going to buy 5 soprano ukuleles for their family to play, but they would buy
super soprano.
a soprano at a concert.
One for Papa.
and then the baritone. I think you've had this conversation with Tom at my store. The baritone is kind of an interesting one because nobody.
Oh, you gotta tread carefully here.
Yeah. So Jim is.
Tread carefully.
Is in the chat right now. Jim from Australia, and he has kind of taken it upon himself to do as much research as humanly possible. on the
Jim, if you can actually
baritone.
find an actual first builder and first date for a baritone, let us know. Because
he will.
Well, that's the thing is there are pretty much like 2 separate camps.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're both right around the same time. Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say which one was actually first.
Right. No, and then that's one of the things about it is that, it'd be one thing if those two were like maybe 10 years apart. Because but they both, it's one of those things that it just kind of just popped into the community, and it's like, oh, you both kind of showed up at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
this is awkward.
Yeah. So you're both wearing the same dress.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing, at least from the research I've done too, is that the baritone is kind of an interesting one because there's not a super definitive one. Nobody can be super definitive about.
Like, I invented this.
Yeah.
There are claims, but
there are claims about it, but both companies who've made that claim seem to have about the same amount of cred behind them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like neither one of you are. I actually think it's probably more along the lines of just parallel evolution, and it just so happened that both people who were thinking about this instrument.
So that's where it was gonna head anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, we kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger after the tenor. It makes sense to have a bigger one.
Well, we have this tenor guitar, so
yeah, exactly. Let's do something with that.
Like that. Nice. So once again, see, he's like a triple threat. He's like a very educated musically. He's an accomplished musician on stage, and he also helps run a music store.
So, where do you stand on baritones, Mike? Are baritones should baritones be considered a part of the ukulele family, or not to like? We're not gonna divide anybody,
stir
but
this pot again.
Stir that pot. So which is brew right now?
Okay.
So you consider an ukulele? It's not even tuned the same.
But
let's not let that influence your answer.
Okay.
Because some of our members, we've said that
ukulele.
we've said that we don't necessarily consider them ukuleles because they're closer to guitars in our opinion. And some of our members are like, I'm so disappointed that it's like, well, no, you can still play it.
Yeah.
We're not telling you not to play it, but it's just that's why we focus on the GCEA tuning rather than the baritone.
There we go.
Well, now, focusing on the GCA tuning does make sense in the fact that if you tried to focus on baritone tuning, the DGBE tuning, you would have to basically revamp everything you've done. All the thousands of videos you guys have online to just change fingering
names
charts. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my take on this.
But is it an ukulele?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it?
Here's why.
Okay.
Here's why. Number one, there's plenty of evidence of offshoots of instruments that are tuned differently. For example, if you've ever seen a baritone guitar, obviously I have a good buddy and friend of Aldrine too, Casey.
Okay.
Kamakane.com, you can check him out. And yeah, look for muscles on a guitar. You'll know the place. So his main instrument is a baritone guitar. His baritone guitar is basically what it is. It's a huge 6-string guitar that's instead of E to E tuning, it's B to B tuning with the same scheme.
So 8 strings? 8 strings?
No.
I was like, B on the other side? No. It's just from B to B.
Yeah. So basically it's just your regular guitar, tuned down like 5 notes. So,
but it's interesting because it keeps the same tuning distance, right?
It does, but so does a baritone and a soprano ukulele, because the tuning intervals are the same, except to be honest, it's a ukulele with a low G, and that would be exactly the same as a baritone ukulele. I think part of it is where you got to come is where was the inspiration of the person building the thing in the first place? So the first person to build the baritone guitar was not trying to build a completely new instrument. What he was trying to do was build a guitar that could reach down into a range that regular guitar couldn't tune down to.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So that was the idea. A lot of guys used to open and down tunings. If you're into slack key guitar, there's a lot of tunings that on a regular size 6-string guitar, they're kind of hard because the strings get real floppy.
That's kind of the same thing with 5-string basses, right? It gets lower too, so to give it an extra octave or an extra range.
The difference would be is that on a 5 and 6-string bass, you're just adding more strings, and the central strings stay the same.
Yeah.
With this, you're changing the entire tuning scheme of it. Now, admittedly, if you want to talk about guys who are playing super death metal, heavy metal music, those guys just tune their basses way, way, way down. And what a lot of them do is they put super, super thick, heavy strings on them. So the first guy to do baritone guitars, which I don't know what that is, he was just trying to invent a guitar that was bigger, had a longer scale length, so you could tune it way, way down and get these really big, fat, low notes, but still maintain good tension on the strings. Because if you play a 6-string guitar, if any of you play guitar, try tune your E string, your low E string down to C, and C, your string will be like that. Yeah. It just doesn't work very well. So they invented this baritone guitar with a longer scale length so that you could tune it down to notes like that, and it would feel tension wise like a regular guitar. So what I feel is that whoever invented the baritone guitar, whoever it was, that's what they were trying to do.
Just try to reach a
lower. I feel like they were trying to complete more what I feel is the ukulele choir happening. So there's a soprano voice, a concert or alto voice, a tenor voice, and a baritone voice. But as many of you know, a baritone can be strung either way. It's the only one that you really can string both ways.
You can do it with tenor.
Yeah, high string. I've seen that with tenor, but again, the strings I feel you have to have the right strings, otherwise they're gonna feel like super flop.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, so the baritones I feel like the only one that is equally as playable at both. You know, as long as you change the strings, and I feel like whoever invented the baritone, that's kind of what they were going for. They were going for that next lowest instrument in the family, and the only way really to do that was to tune it down. And then they realized that much like the ukulele and guitar, they share the same tuning scheme. So it made, and a lot of people were transferring between guitar and ukulele. Yeah. So they felt that was the logical one to go with, to go down to DGBE, because that meant if you were a guitarist, then you could make those, and just by removing the fingering from the E and the A strings, you would know already what chords you were playing. So based on that, that's why I would say
it's an ukulele.
That's why I would say it is a ukulele.
It's valid. It's valid. I mean, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'd say it's valid. It's a valid opinion. That makes your reasons,
open discussion.
Your reasons are very valid.
Yeah,
so right on.
Although
respect your opinion.
It's kind of like, well, because that's the thing is that like it's kind of like it falls between ukulele and guitar, but then like the baritone guitar doesn't fall in between any instruments, you know.
Yeah, mostly because past that, range-wise, past that, you're already getting down into like an actual bass guitar. You know, so I think that's why the baritone is a halfway between like a regular six-string guitar and like a bass guitar.
Is it bass or guitar? Same question again.
That depends.
Yeah.
Which bass we're talking. If we're talking about the upright bass, the family that's derived from is the viols, the violins, violas, things like that. However, remember that the electric bass, like the one you have over there, Leo Fender specifically designed the electric bass for guitar players to be able to play bass. That's why he designed the thing. He wanted to create a bass frequency instrument that was fretted specifically and could be played by a guitar player so they could double and not lose work, because a good guitar player can double on an electric bass without too much, mental change. An upright bass player, a regular guitar, a guitar player can't go to an upright bass necessarily and do the same thing.
Yeah.
They're so different at that point that, just because he would understand those are the same four strings and the sequence of notes, that's not nearly the same thing as,
Yeah.
Well, it's like fretless. The strings are different.
Spacing.
You play it differently. Like you attack differently. So it's just
right. It's just a different instrument completely. It's similar to that question, being that. So here's a thought on that question. Is the upright bass an electric bass? Are they both basses in that way? The baritone ukulele and tenor ukulele, soprano ukulele, the same thing, because technically they're both basses. Nobody would look at an electric bass or hear it and not think it's a bass versus an upright bass.
That's a bass,
but they are more different because I guess that's the point I'm getting at, because nobody would look at someone playing upright or electric and not think they were a bass player or not think one was a bass, and yet they are miles more different apart than a baritone ukulele and a tenor ukulele.
And it's to the point where it's like you said, right, where guitarists could go from electric guitar or acoustic guitar to electric bass guitar, but they couldn't necessarily go to upright bass.
That's right.
And then the same thing too, where an upright bass player that transition might not be smooth between upright and then a bass guitar, right?
Correct.
Where I've heard stories of bass guitarists try upright bass and then they're like, I don't know how to play this thing.
I think it'd be easier to go from upright to electric. Yeah.
I guess so, with the frets. Yeah. But I've heard like the same thing with upright basses go to electric, where they're like, I can get the notes, but the technique is different.
They put the bass this way.
Yeah. Can we just put like nail cut on top of these strings?
Bill Wyman from the Rolling Stones used to do that, actually, and so did Jim Fielder from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It was interesting. Yeah, it's kind of a being that I was an electric bassist that went to upright bass. Yes, that's it. It's one of those things that from the beginning you think it's gonna be easy, and then it's really, really not.
Play Spain on that thing.
Oh my god!
I heard a story of electric bass player or like a bass guitar player, and he got a job, and then when he went there, they're like, "Oh, so you can play upright, right?" And he's like, I guess I can. And he tried, and he like went to a practice, and then he got a call from his his management, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, so basically the company that hired you can't fire you because you're a part of the union, but they really need you to quit because you're not good at this. And he was just like, oh yeah, sorry, I guess I quit,
There's like a Mitch Hedberg joke like that where like, oh, you're a chef, now like I want to see you farm or whatever. Like you work with food, right?
Something related.
Something like that, yeah.
You just where people just think like, oh, it has the same name or whatever, it's close enough.
Yeah,
you can
it doesn't transfer over immediately. It takes work. It takes a lot of time.
So let's actually go back to the fact that you run an ukulele store. What are some trends and stuff and happenings in the ukulele world retail wise that you've been seeing? We didn't go to NAMM this year, so what have you seen as far as trends and what's been selling? Maybe like a specific size people are gravitating towards, maybe a specific maker, or even if they have cool little like. I don't know, like they do little things that they change. Features.
What I'm overall noticing is that a lot of manufacturers are even more now trying to get into the low end. They're realizing that probably
affordable ukes.
Yeah. As an example, one of the most popular selling ukuleles has been for years is the K15S model from Kala.
Okay.
And they have the Macalas under them as of like the super student models, but they recently came out with the concert and tenor version of the K15.
Okay. And what are they priced at?
Retail only $15 more than the Macala versions.
Then why not? Just upgrade it.
So it upgrades you to better tuners and mahogany laminate instead of agathis laminate.
So it's not just the name; it's like the build is different.
The build is different. Obviously, the design is exactly the same for all of them because it's Kala. But yeah, being able to retail a Macala tenor at $120 and then they're only asking $135 for the Kala version. That basically, I think what a lot of them are trying to do, they're just trying to get down into that, more beginner range. They realize there's more beginners out there, more people starting. Websites like this, and just the fact that there's more people just playing ukulele in the public eye and more people are just getting interested in it. And so what they're trying to do is put out as much quality instruments in the lower end so that I wouldn't necessarily say that the K15C concert is that much better than the MKC, but it is better. And the fact that it's only like $10, $15 difference, by giving people so many more options in a defined price range, you know what I mean? Makes a big difference, because I think for certain companies, by having those, like if you look and it's somewhere in between like the $80 to $120 range, if you have one ukulele in that range, then people had better like that one. Yeah. If you have 5 ukuleles in that same range, your company is much more likely to get that sale in the end.
Choices.
Yeah.
And I think like for Kala especially, like they did you see a lot of people who start off with the Kala and they've been buying the like premium koa Kalas, right? Like after they kind of stick with the same brand and just decide to like level up in price or level up in quality.
Yeah, because I would think that like somebody who was playing like an entry level Kala like would graduate to something more, but I guess now that Kala's kind of introduced the Elite series, like, and I think when we kind of go with a brand name that they trust, when
we saw the Elite series come out, we saw a lot of people like go like, "Oh, I love my Kala. I'm just gonna get one of those," and it's like, "Oh yeah, that totally makes sense for Kala. Like, why not already?"
Well, and with Kala, there was a smart move for them because you guys have traveled all over the world. and you've been to plenty of music stores everywhere, I think it's fair to say that you don't really find ukeleles that many places.
Not everywhere. No.
It's hard because most companies here in Hawaii, Kamaka, ukulele, they're all small builders. Yeah. There's no Fender guitars of ukuleles, at least as far as like size and spread. Mm. So what Kala was really smart because, yeah, a lot of people who come into my store say like, oh, I really love koa wood ukulele, like a beautiful koa, professional grade ukulele. Well, the thing is, here in Hawaii, yeah, you can totally get that pretty easily because there's stores all over that have all the Hawaiian brands and stuff like that. But what if you say lived in like Davenport, Iowa?
Yeah.
You can't. You don't have that open. You don't have that opening to you. I mean, I guess you could go online and hit up some of those stores.
We do get people who say that they do order that, but again, it's like you don't know what that instrument's gonna sound like or what it's gonna play like.
You want to be able to hold it and really hear what it sounds like and feels.
And you are much more likely to be able to walk into a store and get a Kala Elite, and play it first and really, rather than a Kamaka. If you the further east you go, quite frankly, the less chance you have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like it's just all the brands here in Hawaii, they're like small enough where if they make a deal with the store, it really is like somebody from the company, somebody from Oahu, who goes to the store and is like, "Can you hold our ukuleles in your store, or do you want to hold our ukuleles in your store?" It's not like Kala has like they're distributed all over the world. Yeah, they're a world.
Well, I guess that's what like NAM is and stuff. That's why like Kamaka, Kanilea, Kola, all these guys have booths and stuff. They're looking for people to come in and and be like, oh, we want to carry your ukuleles and stuff. But then like it's tough because the big ones. I mean, I would imagine their white whales would be something like Guitar Center or whatever. But then like I don't think Kamaka or Kanilea wouldn't be able to fulfill those orders. No. So, but Kala can, and that's why guys like Kala, Lani Kai, Ohana. But I've noticed that in the Asian markets, of course, Kala is a big one, but there's also like Nue is a big one as well. In the UK, they're kind of their own Kala in each little region, which is really cool. So, although Kala is still, king of that,
still everywhere,
yeah. And I think from what I've noticed in the store is just that a lot of people, the customer that comes in looking specifically for it's funny because very few people are looking for anything in the middle. They're either I'm looking for the beginner instrument. I don't want to cost too much. I just want to be, a good instrument that I can play. And if I don't continue with it, I don't feel bad that I dropped all this money on it. Or they come in saying like, I want, solid koa. I want Hawaiian made. I want, this a lot. It kind of depends on where they're from. Mainland tourists who come here tend to come here. Sorry, not generalizing, but I'm generalizing. They come in maybe knowing a Hawaiian name, but a lot of them come in just saying like, if I can find something koa made in Hawaii, I'll be really happy.
Yeah.
And so that actually opens up a lot of things. Yeah. Funny enough, the most specific tourists or the most specific customers are the Japanese. They come in.
They know
exactly
the brand,
what they want.
The model. Yeah. They have researched what every place else is selling it for. It's really interesting because they'll come in and they'll like, I want a Kamaka tenor. And we're like,
this one in this catalog.
Yeah, I want this HF3, bing, 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 and really, with them, it's like either you have it or you don't.
How often do you guys have HF3s in your store? Not
very often.
Yeah.
Honestly, not very often because this goes back to that same thing we're talking about. Kamaka is a huge company for Hawaii, but they're not a big company overall, which means that sometimes, when we make an order with Kamaka, it's like, no doubt, every time we've had Kamaka ukuleles in the store, they go for sure. We get them in within 3 months; they're probably all gone. When we order probably 5. On the other hand, if we order from Kamaka, it can be a while before you ever see. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if, like, if we want to constantly have them, we'd either have to buy tons of them, which we can't really afford to do, or literally the instant the order arrives, we make the next order.
Yeah.
Just
Just
so,
have them.
because
Yeah.
it's going to be,
Yeah, a
and
long
really 3 to 4 months is how long it takes to sell them, but it's going to be 5 to 6 to 7
So you get some more.
till we
back.
actually get more.
Can you do 2 orders? So just like stagger them out so that they come like 3
We
months
thought
apart.
about it.
Okay, so tell me, like, how often does a tourist or a visitor from from the mainland or anywhere else really like ask you like, oh, I want like this, and this for like $100?
Yeah.
And what do you tell them?
Every day.
Because I
Every
get
day.
I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, can you suggest me a uke that is like not laminated, like solid top, koa, blah 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 blah. This
Hawaiian
and,
made,
Hawaiian made,
custom.
yeah.
But not more than
$100.
$150.
Yeah, exactly. I get that all the time.
$200. Yeah.
So, and how many people do you do you see like look shocked when you tell them like, oh, those kinds, those
And-
ukuleles cost like $1,200 and up?
Every day. And all
Really?
of them.
Did you ever hear this, Mike? Oh, why is it so expensive? It's smaller than a guitar. It shouldn't be that expensive. They're
Every
using
day.
less wood. Yeah, it's like
I mean, a lot. You totally hear it because a lot of people just don't do that amount of research.
yeah.
You know,
Like
I mean,
the Japanese.
no, that's the thing. Like I said, the Japanese tourists that come in, like, they're very specific. Like, not only do they come in knowing exactly the brand and model that they're basically looking for, and even if they're not looking for more than one, it's like 2 or 3 specific models. Like, I come here, I either want the Kamaka tenor, or I want a Kanilea tenor, or I want a Koaloha tenor. One of those 3 I'm happy with. And if I'm going to get the Koaloha, I only want to pay between this much and this much.
Oh.
Like, they come in real...
I know how much they are, Mike. I don't try to upsell
They come real prepared.
I'm guessing that when they say I'm only willing to pay this much or this much, it's not like it's reasonable. It's not like super low or
No. That like a lot of they'll basically like Priceline.com it and like kind of check out what a bunch of different places are selling for and then come up with the range. You know what I mean?
Someone should make that website. Like an ukulelepriceline.com to see like what the prices are. No, dude, that's genius. That's a free idea for somebody. If you guys want to do that, you can totally take that because we're not gonna do it. But so I should be able to go to a website and be like, I'm looking for Kamaka HF3, and I'm around this area. Like, say I'm gonna go to Oahu, and I'm looking for a Kamaka HF3. Bam, 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 and it shows you like, all the places. Maybe not even specific as a Oahu, like maybe just online stores. Like, oh, here's all the HF3s online, and here's how much they are, and where you can buy them the cheapest. Bam! Someone should make that. I think use it. That's why. So make it.
I think like the people who go into stores and they go, I want a koa, like custom Hawaiian made koa ukulele, and then they get surprised by the price. Like, what they've seen is like other people who play it, or they've heard that people say like, oh, this is. If you go to Hawaii, you want a koa ukulele, like a custom koa ukulele. And they're like, oh, okay, that's what I'm going to get. But they don't actually look into it anymore.
Right.
Because how much the people who ask us, or there's so many people who watch our videos and then who go like, oh, what's your ukulele? And we tell them like, oh, it's a Kanilea. And we'll even give them a link. And then they go like, why is it that expensive? It's like, well... Because it's a good ukulele, like
handmade.
That's it. It's
Hawaiian
and that's a
koa
very
ukulele.
common misconception. Because the ukulele is a small instrument, they automatically get to that it shouldn't be that much. Okay, and for those of you watching that have had that thought before, realize that okay, this is an expensive instrument, no doubt. Okay, but comparatively priced, if you found a solid koa wood dreadnought guitar made by Taylor or something like that, you would end up paying a lot. You would end up paying a lot more than this. So people look at a Kamaka tenor and it's $1,400, and to a lot of people that's like, whoa,
$1,400.
But keep in mind that an equivalent to that would be something like, say, like a Taylor K26, which is like $4,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So same wood and
all
same
koa
construction.
wood, highly handmade and stuff
handmade.
like that. That's the comparison you're making.
Yeah.
So,
but I guess the good thing about ukulele is that because it is a small instrument, you can get down to whatever price range you're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be high quality, super high quality.
You can get like a $60, $70 ukulele that's a good, solid beginner ukulele.
Yeah.
Whereas in that same vein, if you got a $70 guitar,
I'm not sure if it would be playable.
Go back to the swap meet that you got it from.
Yeah.
you know,
that's true.
The $70 ukulele would be that one you find in Walmart in the plastic. The Barbie guitar.
Those are good still. What are you talking about?
For guitars, but for ukuleles, you could actually, if you did your research, you could find a pretty solid beginner ukulele.
$80.
I think people get their heart set on koa, and when you tell them like the price, and you tell them like, oh, it's not gonna be $100 for a koa ukulele. Like you're just not gonna find that.
Right. Even koa laminates are going to be much more than that.
It's just because the wood itself costs more than $100. So
well, you know, when I sit people down I explain to them, okay, so here's some things you have to understand. When you ask me for those things, you're asking for something that has been handmade by a craftsman. Okay? Automatically, you got to imagine, no matter what you asked for, if you had somebody come in and craft like brand new cabinets for your house by hand, would you expect that to be $50?
Sure.
No, nobody would. If you went in and bought, you know, like if you like motorcycles and you went to say, you know, OCC and had them build you a custom chopper, you wouldn't expect it to be like
the same as
$10,000 ride.
As
like, you know, like
the same as a
I feel like I gotta go like this because you're preaching.
Oh wait, so handmade ukulele from Hawaii, made out of koa. What are you starting at? Like very like low end of that.
A soprano,
one of the mill.
I'd probably say somewhere
range?
between $450 and $500.
Okay,
Really?
that's really good actually.
That'd be like Kaylee.
Okay, yeah.
It'd be Kaylee. His soprano all koa ukuleles are gonna come out around $450 to $455. Now once you get past that, he is probably the most affordable Hawaiian-made ukulele you're gonna find, at least in solid koa.
Yeah.
As soon as you get past that, you're gonna jump at least a couple $100.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because you know, I'm not
$800.
I'd probably say 7-8 because I'm not super sure on koa aloha prices because we don't carry them. But I know that they're not quite up to where like Kamaka prices are and stuff like that. I think you could probably find a soprano.
I think it's about the same actually.
But
it might be like about $1,000.
Okay.
I haven't looked, but it's been years since it's been at that price.
So, and then you're going to get into things like island ukuleles, which is actually Raymond's all koa sopranos are around that too, about $700-800. And then Kamaka, which is like
island
11.
Ukuleles made here on Kauai.
That is the one. Yeah. But those are his ones. Kamakas are going to be like 11, I think, for soprano. I don't know what.
Yeah, koa aloha's about the same.
$800.
$750.
That's not bad.
But I mean, they also do the opios, which are not koa. They're like acacia. Yeah. So like, you know, it's like.
But those things sound so good. I can't tell the difference. To be honest, I think it's dangerous to have like a koa aloha and an opio that like rivals the koa sound. It should be that much better, right? Like,
but it is pretty. It is pretty. I mean,
it is.
Well, it's the same thing as Kanilea and Islander.
No, but I mean, the sound of a Kanilea is leagues better than the sound of an Islander. You can tell the difference, you know. But I'm saying like an opio and koa aloha is pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yeah, it's like dangerously close.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the things too is people get so stuck on the like koa as a wood.
Yeah.
And the fact that koa, like in their head is like koa means it sounds good. And it's like, oh buddy, like it can sound good, but
and a lot of koa ukuleles do sound really good. But
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe not the sound you're looking for. Yeah. I'd actually turn over to you.
Yeah.
Because we had this discussion a long time ago. You always see him with this ukulele or that one down there.
Yep.
But I seem to recall it's true that one of your recording ukuleles are not koa wood.
Yeah, mahogany.
Mahogany.
Yeah.
You know?
back then when I was doing, we had this session a long time back.
Yeah.
I had a mahogany ukulele that I was tracking with my Martin ukulele, and I was doing my backing tracks with with a Martin uke.
And it just had a different
different
enough
tone.
sound that you could blend it all together. I mean, that would be one thing if you're trying to make an ukulele-centric album, and you're using the same ukulele for literally every track.
Oh no, I know which uke you're talking about. That's like the Bridgewood one. That one, right?
Did you have a spruce one too?
No, I had a Bridgewood, which is
Okay.
Basically like a redwood.
Redwood.
But it's really really tight grain and stuff. Made from
a bridge.
Yeah, from a bridge. Wood from a bridge wood. But like that one, it just sounds super super sweet. So like I like the tone of that. But I did record some stuff way back then with my soprano mahogany ukulele that I really 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 liked.
Right.
I like sopranos for strumming backing tracks and stuff. But then for the main pickings, I have my Kanilea like Bridgewood ukulele.
Yeah.
I think like some of the best sounding ukuleles I've ever played have been like spruce tops too.
Mm-hmm.
Spruce tops, like if you get really good, like really old spruce wood, they make great instruments.
Yeah, I mean for me, still like the golden combination is like spruce top with rosewood backing sides. That's still going to be the combination for me. I play this because I like it, and like I kind of want to represent Hawaiian with the koa ukuleles and stuff. But honestly, if I were to kind of have it just my way to represent what what I like or what I think sounds good, it's going to have to be spruce, rosewood.
I like when I worked in a music shop, I would play or I would show people spruce ukuleles, and they go like, "Oh, you mean it's not koa?" It's like, but this sounds like super good. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, I guess. Yeah, that's some people just want the name koa, right?
And and part of it is just more like, if everybody's ever seen the movie Beyond the Sea, Bobby Darin comes out realization that people hear what they see, which is why he sings his protest song, but it's with a gospel choir and everything, so everybody will actually listen to it. and kind of that's like if someone looks at this ukulele, like this ukulele is beautiful.
Yes.
They look at your performance and like, that ukulele is beautiful.
Oh, one just like that.
And so, kind of. I mean, that's, and unfortunately, what some of them may get into their head is like that very typical signature guitar syndrome where if I get the same ukulele Aldrine's got with the same strings and the same this.
They will play that. Before you even finish that sentence, yes, you will with the Aldrine Guerrero signature model.
With the Aldrine Guerrero signature model, Aldrine Guerrero signature strings.
I think,
you will play just as, maybe better.
10,000 hours of practice.
I think you need to tip your hat.
That's the asterisk. The 10,000 hours of practice. There's like fine print. Yeah.
I saw a video where a guy was going around asking different musicians if gear matters. And it was, funnily enough, at a gear convention, at a convention that was focused on instruments and different gear. And he asked if gear matters. And I think most of them said, they had a hard time. They're like, yeah. And I thought one of the musicians said, it's like a painter. Like a really good painter can make really good pieces of artwork with blue and yellow. That's all they need is or two colors or whatever, But still, it's nice to have your palette. Like, it's nice to have multiple colors. So, while it's not like a necessity, it is a nice thing to have.
Right. I agree with that too. As long as you have a solid instrument, you can
not solid wood.
No, just solid.
Like,
meaning it stays in tune and it sounds good. You can pretty much play any instrument and it'll be good. I agree with that. I've played basses that are, real low end and stuff like that, but they're built well. Yamaha is a good example of that. They're a good company that makes really, really good instruments at low prices.
What is Victor Wooten's brother? He plays guitar. Reggie? Is that his name?
Reggie. Yeah.
I think, and in the same video, they talked about Reggie, who plays like a Squier electric guitar from made in Mexico, Squier electric, while Victor plays Fedora, right?
Fodera.
Yeah. Which is
it's like a $10,000 instrument.
Yeah. So it's like two different sides, and both of them
sound incredible.
Yeah. So
he He plays Foderas. They're a super high-end builder from New York. Vinny Fodera is the builder's name. One of my best friends from college actually plays 2 of it. He's a Fodera artist.
Drop this name, bro.
Denson Angelo, talking to you, man.
Wait.
And he won.
Not Jake, but I thought it kind of
you had the thing. Did we talk about Jake today?
But
no.
Oh, we just did now.
Well, just for the name drop.
But he sent me as a joke. He sent me the bill from his first Fodera.
How much?
It was $11,000. After tax and shipping, it was like $12,000.
Did you play it?
No, he lives in Utah.
Okay.
I haven't seen him face to face.
Sound like $11,000?
Could you drive it around?
I've actually
drive you around.
Drive it around.
I've actually seen. He did some YouTube videos. Demonstrating it and stuff like that. And I mean, the thing sounds incredible.
When you pick it up and play it, it's like, "Hello, Mike. I love you."
Let me tune myself.
I when we went to NAMM, I played like one of like the $80,000 like what is it called, McFerrin or something like that, like guitars that were there. I want to say McFerrin.
I played one too, and then the guy.
It didn't sound $80,000 better than like the guitar that I had at home. It sounded better.
It sounded better, yeah.
I don't think it was like $80,000. You know what I mean? It's like a down payment for a house.
Yeah.
Here in Hawaii.
Here in Hawaii. You go somewhere else, that might be the whole house.
But dang, like I just can't.
Oh, McPherson, you're thinking.
Yeah,
of,
McPherson.
right?
That's what
with the sound hole in the front.
McDonald's.
Bobby McFerrin.
McPherson, yeah.
Look at this McDonald's guitar.
Yeah, dude, they have like $100,000 guitars, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you just go try it out and play it." I'm like, I don't know if I, do you guys have insurance? Like when I
I've actually found that most of the people who make guitars like that, it's like. They just keep adding on stuff. Like Jens Ritter made one, $100,000 bass guitar. But the reason it was like $100,000 was, I mean, his basses are expensive already. His basses are like $4,000 or $5,000. But then he made it because like he put gold leaf on the instrument, and the tuners are like gold plated and
Stradivari wood.
And I'm just like, I mean, cool. I mean, he sold it.
Someone bought it. So
someone bought it.
Worth that much to someone.
Yeah, I mean, someone did pay $100,000 for that thing. But to me, I was like, why?
No. All right. So, do we have any questions from the audience before we go?
We actually had one question from a while ago. So Lisa asks, was re-entrant tuning always like the traditional ukulele tuning, or was there low G? Was it steel string?
Good question. Great question.
You know, I'm a little fuzzy on that, to be perfectly honest. I believe, from what I've read, I believe that the re-entrant tuning has pretty much been a thing the whole time.
Was the Machette re-entrant?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
I believe that Machette was...
Because if it wasn't, I think because it's based off of that.
Right, because I think that the reason I feel that I think that it was in general, the purpose of these instruments at the beginning wasn't about like the type of technical picking virtuosity you find in a lot of today's players. A lot of it was just vehicles for people to sing.
Yeah.
And the reason I talk about re-entrant tuning when I teach it to customers coming in the store is that if you have a low to high tuned instrument and you strum this way, you can tell it's a downstroke. And if you go this way, you can tell it's an upstroke because of whichever the first note you hear tells you what it is. So if you hear a low note at first, you know it's a downstroke. Whereas with a re-entrant instrument, you can go down or up. And it doesn't make a difference because they're both high notes, so that it actually lends your strumming a more consistent quality and sound to it. And being that, you know, both these instruments were basically created first as strummers, instruments to accompany singers, that I think is where a lot of that comes from.
Yeah.
It also makes sense too with like hula halaus, right?
Yeah.
Like where they're going from chanting to all of a sudden they have to strumming, singing. It's just like, oh, let's make it easy. Let's not make it super complicated. Let's just make it so the hula dancers can, or I guess it can be complicated.
Yeah, because sometimes they have like the low A's on them and stuff, and it's just they do have weird tunings. But I can see your point though, Kai. Like
starting off, I would think that they would want to be like, well, we're starting from chanting and using ipus. Let's make it like easy. Let's not worry about making it too complicated.
Okay, any other questions before we dig out?
No. Well, like
Manuel Nunes,
I
joke.
I think one other thing though too is like some people were questioning or they're saying like, well, does that mean logi is not an ukulele anymore? And it's like, no, it doesn't really matter our opinion, right? Like
well, I mean,
with baritone too.
Yeah.
Even.
Well, like what Mike said, the whole build with the kind of strings, with the bracing, and that's kind of what defines ukulele.
Yeah.
So if you're using low G or high G, same thing, still a uke.
Also, keep in mind that even things like tunings have been different over the years. If you, I can't remember, if you go back to about the 20s or 30s, like Roy Smeck's era, I believe, what was it? A whole step up or a whole step down? Something like
Step
that.
up.
Yeah. So to tuning, so it wasn't GC. Yeah. So even the tuning, the ukulele has been altered at times. There are people who play, I guess, what you would consider like an open tune slack key style. Tunings change. If you ever play a string instrument, tunings are a malleable thing. You start with one, basically at the base of the instrument, but as you play, you might find that a different tuning facilitates what you play. I mean, even look at guys like, you might not even realize this, guys like Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. He almost never played in standard guitar tuning. He always played in some sort of open D or an open G, and a lot like slack key tuning, actually, for those of you who are familiar with that. He played in that, and the reason was Keith's main influence in his life was old school blues. And a lot of those old school blues guys played in open tunings, mostly because they were terrible guitar players. And so the ability to just go like this to bar chords all the way up and down, don't get me wrong, by the way, if you're blues fans.
I know. Now we just lost a bunch of people.
Don't at me, because
I love punk music, and that's like the same reason you do open D is because you're not good enough to do the like bar
to do
with this
2 frets. You want to just do 1 fret.
Oh, man.
and a lot of it was for that was also just because so a lot of those guys in the old blues days, they definitely weren't educated musicians.
Meaning that they calling them not educated. It's alienating our audience.
They got a hold of the instruments and learned to play without necessarily having someone to stand over the shoulder and go like, oh, that's not how to do it. So whatever they came up with, so if anybody plays guitar, if you strum it open, it's not that's not the most pleasant sounding chord. The E6 isn't the greatest sounding chord in the world. So they would, a lot of times those guys would just start retuning until they could go like this and it would sound great.
Well, that's what I heard about slacky guitar, right? Is that all the Portugal, like
Paniolos.
Yeah, they all went away and left the guitars, and then they're like,
"What do we do with this?
How do we? I guess we just tune it like this. Like, I guess
you forgot to bring it to
Yeah.
Well, and the funny part about that is that when they left the guitars there, I mean, they may have known how to tune it in the Spanish tuning, but they were used to playing like duos and trios and like multiple guys. So it's like, oh, I'm here by myself.
Gotta
redo it so that they can play it as a solo instrument and be cool with it. So I mean, a lot of those things, there's evolution and there's people just trying to figure out what works for them. So in the end, I think what defines an instrument is, certain things that don't change. Like I said, so the design, the bracing, those things that ukuleles may be different from builder to builder, but the basic concept of them doesn't really change. And that's how you help to define an instrument. Adding a low G on an ukulele doesn't really like change what it is. It might change what you do with it, but then again, like any music instrument, you're free to do whatever with an instrument you want. So, I mean, you can, if you want to play pop or rock or jazz or Hawaiian or, I don't know, Bulgarian wedding music, it doesn't really matter.
All right. So, on that note, you can play whatever you like. Right? We're going to end it right there. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. Always an awesome conversation with this guy. So we're going to have this guy back again next month, maybe, or maybe later on this month. We don't know. I'll ask him one Wednesday night to come on a Thursday morning. But Kahai, yes.
Oh, next week you guys aren't gonna be here, right? You guys
No,
are
we
gonna
will.
be
Yeah, we will be in Auburn, California. So next week, no Thursday live lesson, no
Friday jam.
No Friday jam as well, and
One-on-one
no Thursday
coaching or songs made easy.
Songs made easy. That's what it is. Songs made easy, and no one-on-one coaching. So we won't be doing that next week. But tomorrow there'll definitely be a jam, and today there's definitely a one-on-one coaching and a songs made easy. So stick around for those.
The week after we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back the week after. Okay, we'll see you folks up next for Sounds Made Easy. Thank you so much, Mike. On behalf of Aaron and Kahai, we'll see you next time. Aloha.